will be in a better position to better negotiate. So let me tell you where we've got up to on this issue. And you might remember that it stemmed from the most recent federal budget. In that budget, we saw the creation of a wonderful new authority that will administer the Australian film and television industries. It's going to be called the Australian Screen Authority. Unfortunately, regrettably, the video game industry was excluded from that process, and the schemes and rebates and incentives that will apply to the film and television industry under this auspice of Screen will not apply to video games. We looked at these incentive schemes, these rebates, and we thought, this is fantastic. I've got a lot of friends in the film and television industry, and let me tell you, there were champagne corks popping left, right and centre. This is a great deal for these guys. We felt, yeah, the structure kind of makes sense as well. It's a good evolution of where the incentive scheme, the rebate scheme has been historically. But all we'd like to do is see the definition of Screen include the fastest growing section of our screen culture here in Australia, the most vibrant section of our screen culture in Australia, the art form of the 21st century, video games. A pretty fair assertion to make, we thought. So, led by Greg Bondar, the CEO of the GDAA, we got on the campaign trail, the lobbying trail. We went to Canberra, we tried to meet with as many key decision makers as we could. We met with Senator Helen Coonan, the Communications Minister. We met with her opposite number on the Labor side, Senator Stephen Conroy. We met recently with Senator Brandis, and we met with the Greens as well. Over the course of a very intense 3 or 4 month lobbying period, we tried to get our message in front of as many important decision makers around our industry in government as possible. And let me tell you, it was a battle. It was a battle initially getting in front of these people, and it was a battle convincing them that what we had to say was worth hearing and worth acting upon. One minister put it to us this way. He said, you guys have got to understand the concept of the vomit principle. The vomit principle is where you say something to someone so many times that you feel like you're going to throw up. And that's the only way that you're going to get your message through to government. And we've taken that away, and I don't feel like I'm going to throw up quite yet, but I've certainly been saying more or less the same thing for many, many months to as many people as will listen. I'm happy to say that we have got some results from our toils. We have Senators Conroy and Coonan saying that if elected, they will sit down with the Game Developers Association of Australia after the election at the table to consider the extension of this tax offset to the video game industry. Now, they're not saying that they're going to give it to us. They're saying that they recognise that we should have been at the table initially and that they're happy to bring us to the table if elected. Now, there are plenty of details around this offset scheme that still have to be ironed out. And I'm not sure that even after days, weeks, months of discussion after the election next weekend, that we will get that result. But certainly the battle's not over, and certainly we're going to continue to push to have that offset extended to video games. We're going to continue to push for a level playing field for the video game industry with the film and television industry in Australia. I'm probably preaching to the converted in this room when I say that I think we absolutely deserve that level playing field. And really, I want to enlist the support of everybody in this industry to help us fight for this cause. There are plenty of things that you can do to advance the interests of your industry here in Australia. It's a common theme, something we often talk about, where we say what we all need to do in order to make the video game industry more mainstream is get more people playing games. When you have a party at your house, bring a console out, ensure that people who perhaps haven't seen video games or been exposed to them are able to understand where the industry's got to. I got my dad a DS for his 60th birthday. These sorts of things, these ways of getting people more involved and interested in the industry. Now, in terms of our lobbying efforts with Parliament, there is plenty that you can do. We're generating a lot of press, a lot of interest around this issue. a lot of newspaper articles, a lot of web posts. Now, I've sat in meetings with senior ministers and shadow ministers, and they have mentioned to me particular forum posts on relatively obscure, specialised video game forums. These things work. Posting on forums on this issue is a way of getting the issue out there, as a way of raising awareness. So is writing letters to local members and ministers or to newspapers. Set a Google alert for GDAA so that when web coverage of the GDAA comes up, you get a note in your inbox, go to the forum, post on the forum, lend your support to this cause and to the industry generally. I really would encourage everybody to do that. It all helps. I'm very happy, by the way, to say as well that the party who spent the most time considering this issue is the Australian Greens. And they have come behind us 100% in our support, in their support for us to have this tax offset extended. They've not said that they're going to consider it if elected. They have said, though, that they will support us in relation to the offset no matter what happens after the election. They put together an issues paper, which was distributed a couple of days ago. They've taken the time to think about this issue and genuinely have lent their support to us, which I think is fantastic. Let me talk now, just briefly and finally, about where we are now at the end of 2007 as a video game industry in Australia. We have nearly 2,000 people directly employed in this industry at game development studios around the country. We're doing conservatively about $125 million in turnover. So that's the amount of money in total that publishers pay Australian developers to make games. And that's starting to get pretty big. It's still small by many industry standards, but as a creative industry, say compared to film, it is pretty impressive and growing rapidly. I think the market in Australia at present is fairly buoyant. Every company seems to be hiring because of growth in the video game market generally. We're seeing more and more opportunities coming to Australia, more and more development deals being done down here. I also think that our reputation internationally is growing. It would be rare to talk to a publisher VP in North America, Europe or Japan, somebody responsible for the acquisition of titles, for putting new deals together. It would be very rare to talk to one of those people now and for that person not to be able to name 4 or 5 Australian developers and 4 or 5 titles that have been developed in Australia in the last couple of years. Let me tell you, 5 years ago, that was not the case. 5 years ago, these guys didn't know much about what was happening in Australia. They'd maybe heard of a couple of companies, maybe worked with a few. It is now very much the case that we are on their radar. And I'd go further and suggest that in the last 12 months, we would have seen a major representatives from all of those publishers, from all of the top 10 or 15 publishers in the world, actually make a visit to Australia. They're coming here to check out our studios and to try to put more work done in Australia. I think everybody, too, is starting to see that we're getting bigger and better projects. Now, we talk a lot about quality in this context and about wanting and needing to raise the quality bar here in Australia. We talk about that in the context, perhaps, of ultimately losing work to emerging game development markets, China, India, Eastern Europe, and that remains true. We do need to raise the quality bar. Of course we do. The way we're going to do that, I think, through fee-for-service work is by being able to negotiate better deals, getting more time, more money to produce better games. If we do that, I genuinely believe that we have the talent here in Australia to ensure that quality bar grows ever higher. Now, finally, it is very, very important for us as an industry that we stick together. I think we're strong today because of the sense of camaraderie that we've always had. We grew up a very small industry here in Australia. Of course, everybody knew everybody. But as we grow, I think we run the risk of losing that collective spirit, of losing that sense of camaraderie. it would be a disaster if